I grew up thinking that something was wrong inside my own home. I barely have any memories of my mother. She died when I was still very young, so everything I know about her comes from old pictures and from the things my brother sometimes mentions. In practice, I grew up only with my father, my brother, and my cousin always around. And that's where the problem begins. My father always treated my cousin differently. It was as if she were his favorite daughter, even though she wasn't his daughter at all. My brother and I lived like background characters inside our own house. I remember silly things that still stick with me. At meals, the seat next to my father was always hers. If there was dessert, he always served her first. I was just a kid, but I noticed. My brother did too. We talked about it between us, but we never got an answer. Why did our own father shine all his light on her and leave us in the dark? That feeling shaped my entire childhood, living in my cousin's shadow, with no mother to defend me. There was one thing that really stood out: the gifts. On my birthday, my father would show up with something basic, effortless. On hers, he'd somehow find the money for something expensive, beautifully wrapped. I pretended not to care, but kids notice. My brother got angry on my behalf, but he went through the same thing. Another detail. In my teenage years, I started trying to stay away from home a little. I wanted to spend more time at friends' houses, do homework at the library, any excuse to get away from that suffocating atmosphere. But my father always found a way to shove my cousin into everything. If I said I was going to the mall, he'd ask, "Why don't you invite your cousin to go with you?" If I went to the movies with classmates, he insisted, "Take her too, she'll enjoy it." No matter what I wanted to do, it was like I was forced to be her shadow. That's when the arguments began. Nothing too big, but constant. I'd say I wanted to go out alone. He'd accuse me of being selfish. I'd say she didn't need to be part of everything. He'd respond, "We're family, and family sticks together." But what that really meant was, she always has to be at the center. It was during that time that I started to feel real anger. Not just annoyance, anger. I remember one Saturday when I'd made plans to study with 2 friends. My dad came into my room without even knocking and said, "I already talked to your cousin. She's coming with you." I hadn't even invited her. I had to swallow it because if I complained, it would turn into a fight. At the library, my friends tried to be polite, but you could feel it was forced. And I spent the whole afternoon feeling out of place, like my life didn't belong to me. Another time, I wanted to go to a small school concert. My cousin wasn't even part of it, but my dad insisted that I buy a ticket for her too. She showed up wearing an outfit that matched mine, even though I hadn't said a word about it. I was so irritated that I faked a headache and left before it ended. These small episodes started piling up. They weren't huge fights, but it was like a daily dose of poison. I began to feel like there was no room for me to exist inside my own house. When the acceptance letter from UC Berkeley arrived, I cried with relief. It was what I'd wanted since high school. To leave home, start fresh somewhere new, to have a life that was finally mine. I showed the letter to my father, thinking that at least this time he'd be proud. But the first thing he said was, "What about your cousin? You're taking her with you, right?" I thought it was a joke. It wasn't. He started talking about how he could help her apply to colleges in California too, how it would be good for me to share an apartment with her, how I couldn't turn my back on family. I took a deep breath and told him no, that this achievement was mine, and I wasn't going to spend more years of my life sharing space with someone who'd always treated me like a rival. He wouldn't accept it. He said I was ungrateful, selfish, that I didn't understand the value of family. And he ended the conversation with a sentence I'll never forget. "If you refuse to take her with you, don't count on my help for anything." It was like he'd ripped the acceptance letter right in front of me. That day it became clear. He would never see me as a priority. I was on my own. After that fight, the atmosphere at home became unbearable. My father practically stopped talking to me, and when he did, it was only to throw passive-aggressive remarks. Things like, "Some people think they'll make it far without anyone's support." It was obvious who he was talking about. My cousin seemed to enjoy the situation. She never attacked me directly, but she'd drop comments that hurt. Once she saw me looking up apartments online and laughed, "Wow, it's so expensive there. Good thing I won't have to pay anything if my uncle decides to send me there too." I pretended not to hear, but inside I was burning. My brother saw all of it up close and was furious. One time he told our father right to his face, "You're choosing her over us again. You've always done that." My dad ignored him and changed the subject, as if nothing had been said. I started working part-time to save money. Every extra hour felt like a way to prove to myself that I could go, even if he tried to sabotage me. At night, I'd research rentals in Berkeley, try to figure out living costs, scholarships, everything. Meanwhile, my father spent his time and energy helping my cousin think about college applications. Not for me, for her. One day, I came home early and walked in quietly. My dad was in the living room, talking softly with my cousin. They didn't notice me there. I sat on the stairs, hidden, and listened. He said he had already spoken with the lawyer and was going to put her name in his will. He also mentioned a life insurance policy, that she would be the beneficiary. She laughed awkwardly and said, "But, Uncle, I don't need that." And he insisted, "I just want to make sure you're always protected." My stomach turned. It wasn't just silly favoritism. It was something much deeper. I stood there frozen, not knowing whether to walk in or run to my room. In the end, I went upstairs quietly, locked the door, and lay on my bed staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of it. Why would he do that for her? Why so much effort, so much attachment, so much obsession? That's when the suspicion was born, that something was being hidden, something I'd never imagined. In the following days, I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd overheard. I just watched. If he passed her the plate first, if he called to ask how her day had gone with that caring tone, I'd remember the will and the life insurance. It was like I was watching everything from the outside. I tried mentioning it vaguely to my brother. "Have you ever noticed he'd do anything for her?" He sighed, tired, and said, "I've noticed for a long time, but now you're seeing it too." I didn't tell him what I'd heard. I couldn't. The information felt too heavy, too big. Deep down, I knew something was wrong, and I needed to find out what. One Sunday afternoon, I went to my uncle's house. He was in the garage working on his car. I stood there for a while, watching him clean the same part 3 times before I finally got the courage to speak. "Can I ask you something?" I blurted out suddenly. He lifted his head but didn't answer, just made a small gesture with his hand, like saying, "Go on." "Haven't you ever thought it was strange, the way my dad treats your daughter?" He stopped what he was doing, took a deep breath. That pause was already an answer. "Of course I have," he said quietly, "but it doesn't matter." "What do you mean it doesn't matter?" I pressed. He tossed the rag aside and looked me straight in the eye for a few seconds. "Because if I told the truth, she'd be the one to suffer the most." I froze. "What truth?" He looked away, went back to cleaning as if he hadn't said anything. "Nothing. Forget it." "What do you mean, forget it?" I tried to pull it out of him again. He just repeated more firmly, "No, drop it." I left the garage not understanding anything. My mind kept hammering. What truth was he talking about? Why would my cousin be the one to suffer? I went back home even more suspicious, feeling like I was getting closer to something that could change everything. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the look on my uncle's face when he said that. It wasn't the look of someone who'd just said something careless. It was the look of someone who had been carrying a secret for years. I started paying more attention to my aunt, too. She avoided looking at me whenever the subject of my father came up. If anyone mentioned how much he helped my cousin with everything, she'd just change the subject. I hadn't thought much of it before, but now it felt suspicious. My brother noticed my odd silence and asked, "Is something going on?" I said no, but couldn't hide it well. He insisted, "If you know something, tell me. I have a right to know too." I wanted to tell him, but I didn't have anything concrete yet. Just fragments, glances, and a growing suspicion that everyone was hiding something from me. It felt like the truth was just one step away, but everyone was doing their best to keep it buried. Update 1. The things that once seemed normal started to feel wrong, especially when the 3 of them, my father, my aunt, and my cousin, were in the same room. One day, we went to have lunch at my uncle's house. During the meal, I noticed something I'd never really paid attention to before. My cousin's eye color was exactly the same as my father's. Same shade, same glint. Even the shape, the slightly narrowed look, as if always judging the world. Neither my brother nor I had that. No one from my mother's side did either. While I was watching, my aunt noticed. She was cutting meat, suddenly stopped, and asked, "Are you okay?" I nodded, but she kept staring at me like she was scared of what I might be thinking. Later, on the couch, my dad made some joke, and my cousin laughed in the exact same way he did. That short, muffled laugh, almost identical. It was the first time a real chill ran down my spine. When I got home, I asked my brother if he had ever noticed. He said, "Yeah, but I'd rather not think about it." "Why not?" "Because if I think too much, I might reach a conclusion I don't want to reach." His words haunted me. I didn't want to reach any conclusion either, but I could feel I was already halfway there. The pieces were falling into place in a terrifying way. My uncle growing quieter, my aunt always looking away, my father's obsessive care for my cousin. It was impossible not to feel that something serious was being hidden. When I was finally accepted to Berkeley, I kept the promise I'd made to myself. I left without looking back. My father didn't help with anything. Not the ticket, not the enrollment, not the apartment deposit, all because I refused to live with my cousin. Every penny came from me and the extra hours I'd been saving. In the first few months, I got by as best I could. I worked part-time at the university cafe, shared a room with 2 girls, and learned the hard way what it meant to live without anyone to rely on. Still, amid all the chaos, I felt a kind of peace I'd never known before. It was exhausting, but no one was belittling me. No one was competing for space with me. My brother stayed in town. His relationship with our father had also deteriorated, so he rented a small studio and moved out. We talked on video calls every week, and slowly, we began to rely on each other more than ever. One day, during one of those calls, he said, "Did you know Dad's paying for her college?" I stopped what I was doing. "What?" "Yeah, I heard him talking to her the other day. He's paying for everything, tuition and rent." A knot formed in my stomach. While I was killing myself to pay bills, he was funding her life comfortably. "And is she still living with her dad?" I asked. "I don't think so. Dad said she's staying somewhere else. Didn't explain where." I couldn't get it out of my head for days. The anger came and went, mixed with curiosity and a strange kind of disgust. Then, a few weeks later, I needed a document from my old school for a college procedure. I asked my brother to check at Dad's house, but he said he no longer had a key. "If you want, go there yourself," he suggested, "but be ready." I went back to my hometown for the weekend. When I got to the house where I'd grown up, it felt like I was trespassing somewhere that no longer belonged to me. I arrived in the late afternoon. The garage was open, and there he was, putting the car away. Next to him, my cousin, laughing at something he'd said. When he saw me, he looked surprised, but not happy. "What are you doing here?" he asked, wiping his hands on a rag. "I need a document," I replied coldly. "From my old school." He didn't say anything. That's when I noticed 2 black trash bags in the corner of the garage. When I got closer, I recognized my old boxes, the ones from my room. Some papers were scattered on the floor, crumpled, stained with motor oil. The document I needed was there, torn and dirty. I picked it up and turned to him. "Why are my things here?" He shrugged like it was obvious. "You left. You didn't want to be part of this house anymore. I had to make space." "Make space for who?" I asked, already knowing the answer. It was my cousin who replied, with that annoying tone of fake calm. "I'm sleeping in your old room." I felt the blood rush to my head. "My room wasn't empty. I just wasn't here," I shouted. "You threw my stuff on the garage floor for that?" My father crossed his arms, impatient. "This only happened because you refused to live with her. If you'd done what I asked, none of this would have been necessary." "You're blaming me for leaving this house?" I stepped forward. "For not wanting to live with her for the rest of my life while she treated me like I didn't belong?" He gave me that same cold look he always used when he wanted to shut down a conversation. "I just did what I thought was best for the family." "For which family?" I shot back. "Because for me and my brother, you've never done anything. But for her, you pay for college, life insurance, a will." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut the air. He went pale, surprised that I knew. "Who told you that?" he asked through clenched teeth. "That doesn't matter. I want to know why." My cousin tried to step in. "Don't talk to him like that. You don't understand." "Shut up," I snapped. "You've always understood everything, haven't you? Always stayed quiet while he walked all over us." My father took a step toward me, his face hard. "You're crossing the line." "No," I said. "You crossed it a long time ago." I grabbed my phone and called my brother. His voice came out tense. "You okay? Come here," I said. "And bring Uncle too. I'm done with this crap." When the car pulled up, my father's face was tight. My cousin standing behind him like a kid caught doing something wrong. My aunt came too. As soon as they walked in, I spoke, not waiting for anyone to sit down. "I want to know why you all let this go on for so many years." Everyone looked at me. "Why did you pretend it was fine for my father to treat your daughter like she was his?" My uncle went pale. My father tried to interrupt, but I kept going, my voice shaking but firm. "He pays for everything for her, does everything for her, and never lifted a finger for me or my brother. We grew up ignored, humiliated, and you all just acted like you didn't see it." My brother put a hand on my shoulder, trying to calm me down, but I couldn't stop. "I want the truth," I said. "Today." My uncle looked down. Then he lifted his eyes, his face tired, devastated. "Fine," he murmured. "Since no one here has the guts, I'll say it." And what came next destroyed whatever was left of that family's balance. My father said nothing, just stared at the floor, as if waiting for the blow. And then it came. "I'm done with this farce," my uncle said, his voice breaking. I'm done watching you, my own brother. Treat my daughter like she's yours. What are you talking about? My father shot back, louder, but without conviction. You know damn well what I'm talking about, my uncle shouted. It's about time everyone here knew too. The silence that fell was so heavy it felt like the air thickened in my chest. I looked from one to the other, my heart racing. My brother was frozen, like he didn't want to believe what he was about to hear. My cousin, pale, trembling, was staring at the man she thought was her father. My uncle continued, his voice shaking. Before your mother died of cancer, he said, looking at me. She called me to the hospital. I remember it like it was yesterday. She was weak, too tired to sit up, and she told me something. Something I should have told everyone a long time ago. My stomach twisted. He took a deep breath before continuing. She told me she caught your father, with my wife. My aunt started crying. My father closed his eyes. It was back when your aunt and I, he pointed to his wife, had separated for a while. I had just found out I couldn't have children. I was devastated, he went on, his voice hoarse. I broke up with her because I wanted her to have the chance to be a mother. We both wanted that. I told her I needed time to think, and we went our separate ways. He looked at my father with restrained hatred, and that's when you took advantage. You were with her, and she got pregnant right after. A chill ran through me from head to toe. My father tried to interrupt. That's not true. It is true, my uncle shouted. Your wife saw it. She told me before she died. She said she didn't have the strength to confront you because she was already at the end, but she wanted me to know, so I could decide what to do. He inhaled deeply, struggling not to break down, and I decided to stay silent because I knew I couldn't have children, and that child, he looked at my cousin, was all I had. My cousin brought a trembling hand to her mouth. Dad, she whispered. Are you saying that? My father stood there, frozen. She stepped back, shaking her head. That can't be true. But deep down, we all knew it was. The resemblance had screamed at us for years. The twisted bond between them, the favoritism, the obsessive care, it all made sense now. I stayed quiet, my uncle continued, voice breaking, because she confessed she'd been with someone, but never said who. And I already knew it was my brother. I just didn't want to hear it. It was easier to pretend. My aunt was sobbing uncontrollably. It was a mistake, she choked out. A mistake that never should have happened. My cousin turned to her, furious. A mistake? You lied to me my whole life. Then she looked at my father, her face twisted in despair. And you? You knew? My father took a while to answer. When he finally spoke, it came out as a whisper. I thought it was better to leave things as they were. I knew there was a chance I was your father. Better for who? I yelled. For you to keep pretending you were a good man? To hide behind lies while you destroyed everyone around you? My brother exploded. We grew up thinking we were never good enough for you, and the reason was this. You saw yourself in her because she was yours? My father didn't respond. My cousin cried against the wall, lost. My uncle was shattered. No one knew what to say. The ground felt like it had disappeared beneath us. The truth was right there. Ugly, undeniable, irreversible. My cousin finally spoke. That's a lie, she murmured, as if trying to convince herself. You're all lying to me. My uncle took a step toward her. I never lied, sweetheart. I just couldn't bring myself to tell you the truth. He paused. But now you have to know. Then prove it, she said, her voice trembling but filled with a new kind of anger. Prove who my real father is. No one answered. The silence in the house screamed. She looked at my father with a mix of hatred and fear. If it's true, if all of this is true, I want to know. I want a test. A DNA test. My father didn't move, his face pale. My uncle looked away, defeated. The following days were chaos. My cousin insisted on taking the test, said she couldn't live with that kind of doubt. My uncle tried to convince her it wasn't necessary, that nothing could change his love for her, but she wouldn't listen. She needed to know. My father tried to stop it, said it was unnecessary, that it would stir up the past, but my cousin went to the lab anyway. She took both men, her father and her uncle, and she waited. They were the longest days of my life. No one spoke. The family split apart in silence. My cousin didn't tell anyone the date she'd get the results. Then, a few days later, she sent a message to everyone. I want everyone here tomorrow. It's about the test. The next morning, my father's house was thick with tension. I went with my brother, not knowing what to expect. My uncle and aunt arrived together, not saying a word. My father was pale, pacing back and forth, sweating even though it was cold outside. My cousin arrived last, holding an envelope in her hands. She looked at each of us, one by one, before speaking. Since you all hid this from me my entire life, you're all going to hear the truth together. Her hands were shaking as she opened the envelope. She read aloud, her voice breaking in the middle. Genetic compatibility, 99.9%. Silence. Then she lifted her eyes and stared at my father. "It's you," she said. "You're my father." My aunt sobbed. My uncle stepped back, his face red, a mix of shame and relief. My brother leaned against the wall, speechless. I felt my whole body go cold. The truth was there, naked, undeniable, inescapable. My father didn't say a word, didn't even try to deny it. He just closed his eyes, as if waiting for a sentence to fall. My cousin took a shaky breath, swallowing her tears. I don't know what's worse, finding out I've been lied to my whole life, or knowing the man who destroyed his own family is the same one who called me niece. My uncle stood still, staring at his brother with watery eyes. "I let you raise what wasn't yours," he murmured, "and you destroyed everyone because of it." My father tried to approach him, but he stepped back. "Don't touch me," he said firmly, and that's how the room dissolved into silence. Nothing more could be said, nothing more could be fixed. The truth had finally surfaced, and with it, the end of everything that had ever been a family. My father kept his head down, motionless. My brother was the first to break the silence. "So that's it then?" His voice trembling. "Our whole lives? We thought it was just favoritism, but it was guilt?" My father tried to lift his eyes, but couldn't. "I made a mistake," he murmured softly. "I never wanted it to be like this." "You didn't want it?" I yelled before I could stop myself. "You betrayed our mother, lied to your brother, and turned us into extras in our own house. And now you say you didn't want this?" He said nothing. His silence was the worst kind of answer. My cousin sat on the couch, crying, the test still in her hands. "I don't even know who I am anymore," she whispered, "or where I'm supposed to go." My aunt tried to reach for her, but she pulled away. "Leave me alone," she shouted. "You lied to me my whole life." "Sweetheart, I just wanted to protect you." My uncle, who had been standing quietly until then, stepped forward. His eyes were red, but steady. "Protect her. You both used me," he said, looking first at his wife, then at his brother. "I lived with this doubt for over 20 years. I thought I was doing the right thing, giving a home to a child who needed one, and you both knew." My brother placed a hand on my shoulder. "Let's go," he said. "It's over." Before leaving, I looked around the room one last time. That house, the center of our lives for so many years, was now just ruins. A place full of people who had finally stopped pretending. I knew that from that moment on, nothing, absolutely nothing, would ever be the same again. Update 2. The days after the revelation were a blur. No one said a word, no apologies, no attempts to fix what was already beyond repair. My father vanished, literally. Stopped answering calls, disappeared from social media, locked up the house for a while. His silence was just confirmation of what he had always been, a coward. My brother and I went our separate ways, but united in one decision, to cut ties for good. We never said the word goodbye, but it was there, unspoken, in every unanswered message, in every memory we left behind. It was strange to realize that deep down, the mourning for our father had begun years earlier, and only now did we understand why. My uncle started showing up more often. At first I thought it was out of guilt, but I realized it was something deeper. He wanted to be there, to make up for lost time, even if it was impossible to erase the past. One day, he took me out to lunch and said, "I'm not your father, but if you ever need someone who cares, I'm here." It was the first time in years that someone in my family said something that actually felt real. He was devastated, but somehow lighter. Like after carrying the weight of that lie for so long, he could finally breathe. My cousin disappeared completely for a few weeks. Then one day, I heard she'd started talking to my father again. No one understood it. Maybe she decided to cling to what was left of the truth. Blood. Even if that blood was what had destroyed everything else. She blocked me on everything. That was her way of saying she'd made her choice. To stay with him, our father. My aunt, on the other hand, lost everything. Her husband, her daughter, her family. In family group chats, her name became a synonym for shame. She withdrew from everyone, and no one saw her again. My father remained silent. I heard he sold the house we grew up in and moved into a small apartment with his new daughter. No words, no apology, nothing. Just an emptiness that fit perfectly with what he had always been to us. Absence. Over time, the pain turned into memory. Family isn't the one who gave you a name or signed your birth certificate. It's the one who stays when everything falls apart. And in the end, that's what was left. Me, my brother, and my uncle. 3 people trying to relearn what it means to be a family. No lies, no masks, just truth. Raw, harsh, but finally ours.